Okay, so we're going to begin. Tonight's lecture is about Midat HaNedivut. In English, I guess you can say generosity or benevolence. They all pretty much mean the same thing. It is very much at the other end, or at the extreme, of last week's Midah, which was Kamtsanut, stinginess. But as you will see throughout the lecture, just because somebody is able to control his stinginess does not make him a generous individual yet. Even though he follows the advice on how to combat stinginess, he might come back to the middle of the road. It does not necessarily make him a generous individual, which is at the exact other end, the opposite end. Chachmei Musar, the rabbis tell us that when it comes to ma'asim, when it comes to performing mitzvot and good deeds, we really have two opposites. One is koach hanetina, and one is koach hanetila. One is the act of giving, and one is the act of taking. These two are pretty much responsible, shoresh, the root of all the ma'asim and the mitzvot. When we do something or we do not do something, it's pretty much related to either one of these two. All the mitzvot in our ma'asim are dependent on this. For example, in dealing with shoresh hanetina, or let's begin with netila, taking from others, there's various ways that people take from others. It could be in a permissible way, it's free. I take it, I'm there first. It doesn't belong to anybody else. We're not talking about receiving or accepting, we're talking about taking. People can take. Then there is taking something that belongs to somebody else by stealing from him. Then there is taking from someone else by forcing him, which is robbing him at gunpoint. That involves much more koach, much more force. It's another form of taking. And then there's an individual that doesn't take anything by force, doesn't steal from you directly, but he does it through rama'ut. He does it by cheating you. He uses his head or his mouth to mislead you. Another form of taking, and in this case, of course, these examples, involves taking something which does not belong to you. Various levels, because some people may be capable of taking at one level, but not going to the highest level. Not everybody will take something by force. Chaz v'shalom, to him that's off limits. Kavim adumim, in other words, red line. That he won't do, but if nobody's looking, he'll allow himself. Right? In business, there's a lot of opportunities for people to charge more than what they're supposed to, because the buyer is naive and does not know. He doesn't think of himself as a thief, but in reality he is a kind of thief. He's taking that which does not belong to him, or he's taking advantage of somebody's timimut, of his ignorance, and therefore, taking for himself or taking advantage of the situation. And the same is true with netina, or the act of giving. As we've spoken a little bit about it in the past in other lectures, there are various levels of how one can give tzedakah, whether one gives it with a smile or not, whether one gives it begrudgingly or not, whether one gives it before the poor man asks him, he goes over to him, he approaches him, whether one gives enough according to his means or just barely to fulfill the mitzvah. There's various levels even in the act of giving. Not everybody is created the same. Not everybody behaves in the same way. However, it's important to keep in mind that this ability, this desire to give, mudba ba'adam, it is actually ingrained. It is in everybody's neshama. It exists in every single human being, the ability to give, and even the desire. Unfortunately, by many people, this desire appears to be extinguished, or appears to be very, very, very low volume. And by others, the volume is increased. They're so giving and so kind and so generous. But everyone has the ability, everybody has this desire, even though it may be in a limited way. What happens, however, is even though people may have a desire, it does not mean that this desire or interest is mechuvan, is properly directed. If one does not have direction, then he may be giving more than he should, maybe giving less than he should, maybe giving to the wrong causes or wrong people. So even though the desire may be there, or the ability, it doesn't mean that it's going to be directed well. It doesn't mean that it's going to succeed. In all circumstances and in every situation, this individual will give. Well, perhaps if it's a very difficult situation for him, then he may lose interest. What about if that individual who he's about to help did not do him a favor a week ago or 2 weeks ago? Maybe he has a grudge against him, he has something against him, and now he won't be as interested. One of my favorite examples is somebody receives an invitation, a wedding invitation. He tells his wife, you could throw it away. He says, why? We're not going. We're not going? Why not? You know him, he's your friend, he's our friend, I mean, why not? No, when he married off his son, he didn't invite us. The example I gave you is actually a little bit different. In other words, not that he's inviting him right now, we're about to invite him, I should have said. We're making a list right now on who to invite, and he's not going to be on the list because he didn't invite us. In other words, either way, either he didn't invite or he doesn't want to invite because of some negative idea that he has in his mind about the other individual. The example that I meant to give was that he's not going to invite him because he assumes that that person did not want him at his wedding, and therefore why should I invite him to my wedding? But wait a minute. Maybe he forgot. Isn't that a possibility? Why are you not giving him the benefit of the doubt? Be kind, be generous, be easygoing. Why think negatively of the individual? Perhaps he was limited in the amount of guests he could invite. Perhaps it was the other side who's paying for the banquet. And it's not up to him who he invites. He's told you you can only invite 40 people, members of your family. If he could have, he would have invited you. You see what I mean? A person has to be very careful, even though he may be kind, he may be generous, he may do ordinarily, he would do things, but there may be things that may get in the way. And many times those things that get in the way are not correct because our judgment is faulty. We didn't think properly. We are in a bad mood. We're upset as an individual. And maybe because you didn't discuss it with him, you're completely wrong in your assumptions. So here you have an individual who may be kind, who may be generous, who's going to invite half the town, but now he's going to limit that kindness because of an assumed negative impression that he has of somebody. So you see, it is possible for people to limit themselves and for the wrong reasons. So a person needs kivun. And we're going to talk a little bit about that later. Kivun means direction on how to be careful that your judgment is correct. This midah of giving, of being kind and generous, is found even with individuals who don't appear to be charitable, don't want to get married and have kids. And you may say, well, you know what? These people are totally uninterested in helping others, in having a family, because wanting to have a family is part of being kind and generous, to give to them, to give love to them. And this individual, because he doesn't have that, maybe no, you will find kindness in this individual. You know how? He's going to adopt a dog. In many countries in the world, there are people who have no kids, and you will see them buying a dog. Now you think that they love dogs, they want a dog as a pet. It's not so much the pet. They really want to give love to something, to someone. They can't have children, they don't have children, they chose not to marry. It makes no difference. But that koach hanetina that I just mentioned, the desire, the interest of giving is still in them. It's just being expressed in a different way. They want to give it to an animal. You see, but it's all the same thing. It's the koach hanetina, to want to give. to want to take care of something. It doesn't have to be a dog, it could be a bird too. But a dog, as they say, is a man's best friend. So a lot of people choose to have, unfortunately, a dog instead of a child. It's cheaper, they say, and it doesn't complain as much, and you don't have to change diapers. So it's for the wrong reasons. It's an example of choser kivun, that this man or woman does not have the proper direction. I didn't say it was a problem with having a dog. I just said that if this is instead of a child, obviously this koach hanetina that he has is not being directed properly. Because he's saying that this is fine, this is good enough, this is instead of this. Rabbis tell us, Olam Chesed Yibaneh. You can't really do without this midah. The reason why HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us that ability and that desire is because the world cannot survive without Chesed. As the Kabbalah explains, the entire creation is an act of love. It's an act of giving. God gave everything. He gave us life, He gave us everything we need, all the tools for our survival. So the entire creation, the design of creation, the purpose of creation is an act of love, an act of kindness. Olam Chesed Yibaneh, Hashem's world is built, is created with Chesed. And He also wants our world, the world that we make for ourselves, our life, to be founded or based on Chesed. Otherwise it cannot exist. What did we see instead? We saw war and destruction, misery. People couldn't care less. Do you know that so much money is wasted in this world? So much food is thrown out. And how many people can all that food that is thrown away feed? So many hungry people in Africa. They don't care about them. If they really cared, they wouldn't just come to their aid when there's a big earthquake. You know, when there's a big earthquake, all of a sudden everybody wakes up and let's do something. What about all those people who are not in an earthquake, who are simply suffering from malnutrition? Instead, they're spending billions of dollars on going up to Mars. That's where, they have their aspirations. Trying to discover space when they haven't discovered all the problems that they have in this world yet. So Olam Chesed Yibaneh. If people were kind to each other, if people would learn to share, we wouldn't have had all the problems we've had throughout our history of dictatorship, of tyranny, of wars, and of divorces. Because what is divorces most of the time? It's a certain degree of selfishness. You think people can't learn to get along? Even if you take people who are very, very different, from different backgrounds, and it's difficult because of that for them to get along, if they make a decision, if they choose to, they can still succeed. Everybody can, even if they're not so much alike, even though they're very different. It's still possible for the sake of peace, for the sake of the kids. Let's just live in peace. What does it require? For each one to be a little flexible and to give in and to be considerate of the other individual's wishes. There would therefore not be as many divorces and as many lawsuits. All these lawsuits, what are they all about? People, if you really have a problem, you should be able to settle it out of court. Why do people go to court? Because obviously they can't settle, or because they want more money. How about all the people that make up stories? The famous examples with an old lady coming into a store and falling down and then suing the owner. She slipped. She never slipped. She fell down so she can collect and she can sue. Unfortunately, it has become very common, and that is why your insurance, whether it's car insurance or home insurance or workers' comp, is so expensive. The insurance premiums have gone up because of all these fraudulent cases of people taking advantage and suing the insurance companies. But all of these kind of situations are the opposite of chesed, the opposite of nedivut, the opposite of being kind and generous and considerate. It's taking for yourself, thinking of yourself and not thinking of others. So the world depends on law and order, depends on the coexistence, the peaceful coexistence amongst people. Otherwise it does not survive. That is why Avraham Avinu, right after the flood, not too much after the flood, he had a very important message to humanity. It was not only about monotheism, that there's one God that exists and not many gods. And it was not only about God Mashgiach, that He supervises the world and that you should thank Him for everything you have. But He taught chesed, He taught kindness. And He was the pillar of kindness. He was an example of kindness. in his life, in his doings with people, in his helping, in his providing them all kinds of forms of assistance, in his achnasat orchim, that he received people over, and he brought them into his home, he fed them and took care of them, and he taught them. So Avraham Avinu is the epitome, he represents the pillar of chesed. But that was his message. It was not just to be nice to people. Some people are just nice. No, his was a message that this is the way you should live your life. Otherwise, life is not worth living. You're not only here for yourself, you're here for others too, to coexist with others. We all need each other. Very important message after the Mabul. Why after the Mabul, after the big flood? Because why did the flood come about? Many of the troubles, many of the calamities that occur in the world, whether it's an earthquake or a flood, calamities are because of terrible sins that are being committed by human beings. All kinds of sins. The common denominator of a sin is to go against God, to go against God's wishes. There's all kinds of sins. But the common denominator is they're going against God's wishes of wanting to have a beautiful world, a world where there's kindness and generosity and peaceful coexistence, and not people who are hurting each other or doing anything that is against Hashem's wishes. So he spread this message. He says, we don't want a new flood. We don't want another catastrophe to occur, right? So remember to live your life based on these ideals. But unfortunately, the history of the world is not so. People have never learned a lesson. And as one saying goes, those who don't learn from history are going to have to repeat it, unfortunately. If you don't learn from the mistakes of the past, then unfortunately those mistakes will recur. People will commit them again. The most important ingredient of love is the koach hanetina, is the act of giving too. People don't understand what love is. They think love is what they see in the movies in Hollywood. What you see in the movies, which you shouldn't see, is called passion. When a man is in love or he's crazy about someone, that's usually passion. It's not love. People don't understand what love is. Love is something very powerful. And true love, the rabbis tell us, is the act of giving and caring for someone else. That is why the word ahava in Lashon HaKodesh is composed of or consists of the word hav. Ahava is to give. Hav zelatet. It's to give to someone else. You care so much about someone that you want to give to him. You want to share that which you have with someone else. You want to, if this is a woman that you want to marry, you want to share your life with her. You want to have kids together. You want to create a home together. You have so much, going for you, so much in common perhaps, that you feel, oh, it feels good, it's comfortable. I want to take care of them. But a lot of people come into a marriage thinking of themselves. What can I get out of it? Does she have money? That's the first thing they ask. Is she good looking? There's nothing wrong with that. Actually, it's good. People should feel good with each other, feel attracted to each other, and money doesn't hurt if there's a little bit of it there too. But that should not be the main reason of the marriage. The purpose of marriage is to form a bond, the Torah says, where you will hopefully build a home and continue to have children and perpetuate the human race. That's one idea. And the second idea, of course, is that each one should complement each other and feel the other one's needs. Because a man or a woman by themselves cannot be complete. They're missing. They're missing things not only on a physical level, they need help. One man alone cannot do everything, but on an emotional level. People become sad, people become depressed, people need somebody to stimulate them, to make them happy. So the bond between the two, besides the children, which is part of the plan of creation, that there should be procreation, besides all of that, there's the actual need. You cannot live by yourself, you need someone else. And it's not only to do your laundry or to cook for you, right? It's also the emotional closeness that human beings need. And in a real soulmate situation, the two can actually provide for each other what the other one is lacking. And that's one of the mistakes people make when they get married. They think, okay, this has to be exactly perfect for me. What does perfect mean? Perfect means when you need each other, when the other one fills in what the other one is lacking. When they say opposites attract, they don't mean opposites who are completely opposites of each other, because that's impossible for them to get along or to be attracted. It's opposites that are in need of each other, that they complement. What one is missing, the other one has. One is nervous and the other one is calm. But imagine taking two opposites, one is a big spender and one is stingy. They're never going to get along. Right? It has to be two that need each other. So Hashem knows which neshamot, which souls need each other. In other words, each one has certain qualities, and He brings them together. And in a true soulmate situation, they should be able to get along just fine. There still may be differences. One is a man and one is a woman, which already makes for a lot of difference. But if you're a gentleman, if you're a good person, and you've refined your character, then you'll be able to get along and learn very quickly to be giving to the other person who's different from you. Nevertheless, in order to make it work, there has to be glue. And that glue, some of it is provided from above through the chemistry, through the natural chemistry of two people who are attracted to each other. But the key of the success to this relationship will not just be that chemistry that is there naturally. The key will be through the interest of the two of them to want to make this a successful relationship. So if the ratzon, the interest is there, we want to succeed. We want to make it work no matter what. No matter what happens to us in our life, we're going to make it work because this is our priority for us. They're hopefully going to succeed. A lot of times a good couple has everything going for them, but what destroys it is the in-laws, the parents of one or the two of them that make them apart. That's why the Torah prescribes, listen, you're going to bond, you need each other. The way to do so is let go of your parents' home. Letting go obviously does not mean to abandon them. They're still your parents. But this is priority number one. This is where you should be focused. You need to give to each other. You can't afford to scatter your energy in all directions. Oh, I got to go see my mother now. I got to go see my father now. I got to take care of this. Wait a minute. Your home comes first. Yes, the Torah prescribes this because that's the only way you can succeed. What happens later on in life is that children draw from the attention too. We've got to give every child attention and love too. But what happens to the love of the parents when they're giving so much of their time and their energy to their kids? It takes a toll. It can take a toll unless you're smart and you catch it on time and you realize that there is a time for quality time of just husband and wife. No kids, no cell phones, no parents, nothing. You go away by yourselves and you spend time with each other. You take walks with each other. You go shopping. You got to be creative. You got to be smart. Otherwise, there will be many, many things that will take away from that loving relationship that you had underneath the chuppah. Once upon a time, they were in love with each other. Then what happened? Why did that love dissipate? They're no longer giving? Of course, they still are giving, but there's so many things that want their giving. There's so many things in life that want their time and their energy, and that breaks them apart. It separates them. Tensions in life, problems, all kinds of issues at work, lack of work. If a husband stops earning a living, it makes the wife very upset, the rabbis tell us. The woman is upset if a husband cannot earn a living. She says, you're the man. Unless a woman is smart. If a woman is really smart and she's kind and she's unselfish, she says, don't worry about it. I know you're not lazy. I know you're trying your best. Hashem will help. And I'll try to find a second job in the meantime. I'll try to make up for it. Why would she want to do that? Because she wants to save the relationship. Is it worth saving the relationship? I hope so. If the man is a good man, then why not? If he's a good father to the kids, is it his fault completely? And it's the other way around too. A husband has to be smart. Right? His wife is having a hard time with the kids. Maybe she needs a little bit of help. Yeah, but my mother didn't need any help. She handled 12 kids. Yeah, that was your mother. But maybe your wife is not your mother. You know, not everybody has exact same strengths. Not everybody is made of the same thing. So what does this take? It takes a certain amount of intelligence. It takes proper guidance. And it takes a good-natured person. If a person is not a good-natured person, then the recipe for divorce is there. Anything can make it, break it. Anything can break it. If the two are really good, refined people, even if they're very different, they'll joke about it. Oh, my husband is like that. Oh, my wife, she's like that. They'll even joke about it. But they won't go each one their way, because they know that this is a priority. So what's necessary for the success of a marriage? Ahava. What is ahava? It's the caring, the wanting to give to the relationship to make it a success. Why? Because this is a priority in life. More than money, more than anything else. To be together with somebody, to love somebody, to have, if it's a woman, to have kids with her, and to do whatever we can to make it a successful relationship. So that is why the rabbis tell us, since a good heart is a very, very important midah, one has to work on acquiring a lev tov. Lev tov of all the midot is the most important midah, as it says in Pirkei Avot. It is the midah that leads to other good midot. If one wants to succeed in having a good relationship, not only with his wife, but with people, with neighbors, with friends, he has to develop a lev tov. A good heart is the key to all the mitzvot. It's the key to all the midot, to having a good character. You start with a good heart, you work on a good heart, you'll have a good eye. You'll be generous, you'll be kind, you'll be sensitive. It all starts from the heart. Now, even though I said in the beginning that we are born with a certain amount of giving, we're not born with shlemut. In other words, no midah that we have is complete. As I said in the very beginning, we all have various degrees of it, some more and some less. So nobody has this act of giving or the desire of giving bishlemut. Bishlemut means completely. That he's so kind that he's not in any way lacking of this midah. There's no such thing as being born with perfection. Even though there are people, through their mazal, by being born in a certain mazal, who are more giving than others. Generous, it comes easy to them. Tzedakah for them is no big deal. How much do you need? Tell me what to write in the check. There are people like that. I know people like that. How much do you want? How much do you need? You know people like that? Yeah. They no problem.
Obama asking for money. He just writes checks.
Yeah. There are people who says, how much do you need? And there's others who tell the children, tell them that daddy's not home. You know, they don't want to face him. You have complete opposites. But even the person who it comes easy to, he's not perfect. Why not? You're going to see soon that in order for a person to do the right thing in a perfect way, he needs kivun, he needs direction. Otherwise, he may easily make a mistake. And I'm going to give you some examples very soon. Rabbis tell us it is possible to have a certain amount, a certain degree of goodness in one by nature. After all, the rabbis tell us, Am Yisrael, the Jewish nation, by shanim rachmanim gomle chasadim. We are bashful, we are kind, right? We are compassionate. That means there's something in us from birth. Recently, there was a study done. Some psychologists carried out some exams. And they discovered, that's what they claimed through their exams, that some people have a gene of generosity. Now, I don't know if it's 100% proven or not, but it was an interesting study, because people, of course, said, that, how could this be true, that some people are born with it? And when I read it, I said, yes, it's possible that there's some gene out there that is hereditary, that it is transferred, that has to do with generosity. Because the rabbis tell us that Am Yisrael, by shanim, rachmanim, gomle chasadim. In other words, we have that in us. In other words, we do have a little bit more than others when it comes to being compassionate and being kind-hearted. So much so that the rabbis tell us, if you ever meet someone who's lacking in his entirety any one of these midot, there's something wrong with him. Perhaps he has non-Jewish blood running through his veins. It can't be. So what do we see from this? It is possible to have a gene. But that gene is not enough to make somebody a generous person. It just means that there is a tendency to be more compassionate and more caring and more sensitive. But it doesn't mean that he will be complete in these characteristics. Certain things are mushrashim, certain midot are there from birth. But for it to behave properly, it needs direction. Let me give you an example of what I mean by direction. We are always tested. Rabbis tell us on every human being, ovrim nisyanot. Nisyanot means tests, trials. To see how will we behave. There are people who will be nice to you unless they're having a hard time themselves. If they are having a hard time themselves, they're not going to help you. Is that a Bal Chesed? Is that somebody who's kind? He's really kind? No. Somebody who's really kind and generous will be kind and generous at all times, no matter how difficult the situation is. But if he does not have proper guidance, if he does not have emunah, if he does not have somebody telling him that this is the right thing to do, he may only do it when he chooses to do it, when it's comfortable, when it's easy for him. Therefore, the nisayon, the test, the trial of an individual who is generous by birth, who is kind through his mazal, will be bedakut. In other words, it will be in the fine line area, in the small details. Somebody who's middle of the road, Hashem can easily test him. Is he kind or not? Easy. There's many examples. Either he succeeds or he fails. But somebody who's generous and kind by birth, he needs a much more powerful test in the smaller details where you can really see if he's generous or not. Here's the following story that pretty much will show you what I mean. There was a very generous man who was a student of the Bach. Bach is one of the commentaries of the Shulchan Aruch. This story goes back about 400 years or so.
The Taz was his father.
Yeah. So, the other way around. He was the father-in-law of the Taz, yeah. So this very, very generous man was a student of the Bach. Very good man, very kind-hearted, gave tzedakah and so forth. His rabbi, had an incident where somebody came over to him and said, "Rabbi, I need your help desperately." What is it? He says, "I own an inn." You know, those days in Europe, especially Eastern Europe, Jewish people used to lease an inn, which sometimes had a bar where goyim would come, spend the night, have a drink, and that was their livelihood. It was usually in the middle of the road where travelers used to go through. It was a good business. The problem was, for those of you who know a little bit about Jewish history of Eastern Europe, it all depended who the poritz was. The poritz was the landlord and was not always an individual who liked the Jews. It all depended on his mood. It depended on who, on the times. And it was very easy for the poritz, for the landlord, to kick out the Jews without a 30-day notice. For any reason, any excuse. And what was happening to this Jew is that another goy wanted to take the business, and he went to the poritz, to the landlord, and somehow tried to negotiate with him a better deal. And he was almost going to get the deal, which meant what? It meant a terrible disaster for the Jew and his family. You know what it meant to lose your livelihood back then? To be left with nothing, homeless, without work, without a home, left to wander and start all over again. It was very difficult, much more than today. And there was no unemployment then. In other words, benefits that you just turn to the Gakanahino. It was very, very difficult situation. So he came crying to the rabbi, "Please help me." Somehow with the landlord. He says, "Go to my student who's the generous man, very generous, and he will help you. Let him speak to the landlord, and I'm sure things will work out." Okay, so he ran to the generous man. The generous man was about to leave. Within a few minutes, he had to leave to a very important, in those days, they used to have fairs, shuk, Yom HaShuk, a day where all the business... Market day, where a lot of people who were in the business of whether it was animals or fabric, they all got together, and that was the best day where you made a lot of money if you were there. A lot of deals were made there. So he had to be there because this was a very important market day for him. And he could not delay, because if he were to delay, he may miss out. So he's catching him at the very last minute. He's about to leave. He says, please help me with this landlord. He says, I'll gladly help you as soon as I come back. That's nice. All right. But he says, no, you don't understand. You got to help me now, because I don't know, until you come back, I may lose my job. I may lose my home. He says, don't worry. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has already determined on Rosh Hashanah how much you're going to make and how much you're going to lose. He's teaching him a lesson in Emunah and Bitachon now. Be calm. But all that lessons of Emunah and Bitachon went in one ear and went out the other. He says, no, it doesn't help me. He was still nervous about the situation. He says, please, can you just wait a little bit? I assure you that everything will be okay. Leave it to me. And he left. Sure enough, as soon as he finished with market day, he went and took care of what he promised to do. From the time he met him until that rich man returned and took care of the problem with the landlord, it was several days. What do you think was going on during those several days in this man's home? The man who was anxious. He was nervous. His wife was yelling at him, "Ata batlan, you're so clumsy. You're good for nothing. You should have pressured him. Look now, all those days that went by, they were scared, nervous, and the whole house was scared and anxious about what's going to happen. They were real full of fear. But Baruch Hashem, at the end, everything worked out. And the generous man was able to convince the landlord to renew the lease and not to give it to anybody else. Was that a beautiful thing? Yeah, great. But that's not the end of the story. This generous man passed away. And you can imagine the rabbi, his teacher, eulogized him. It was a big funeral. He was a great man. But when he came upstairs, it wasn't so simple. Because upstairs, they judge you for everything. When he came upstairs, he saw what was happening to everybody. There was one guy, he's telling in a dream. He's coming in a dream to his rabbi, his teacher. He says, when I came upstairs, I saw a butcher. They were giving him a hard time because for many, many years he fed non-kosher meat to Jews. So they were giving him a hard time until finally they realized that he has done teshuvah, full, complete repentance while he was alive. And they sent him to the Hechal, to the chamber of Balei Teshuvah. Then came his turn. He says, Rabbi, I want to tell you what happened to me. When it was my turn, they took me straight to Gan Eden, because I was a good man. But at the entrance of Gan Eden, there was an angel who stopped me, who didn't let me go in. He says, what are you? What kind of an angel are you? He says, I'm the angel of Hesed, of kindness and generosity. He says, so you shouldn't be stopping my way. If anything, you should be leading me the way. He says, yes, but you don't understand. I'm the angel of Hesed that was incomplete. Incomplete? He says, yes. There was one incident in your life when your Hesed was incomplete, where you were not very considerate. What was that? That was the incident where he went out of his way later on to help with the landlord. He says, you don't understand what you did by waiting for 3 days. You know what you caused that home? What you caused that couple? How much yelling and how nervous they were. You could have gone out off the derech. You could have waited a little bit more and taken care of this. Because you didn't, you waited a few days and then you went to take care of the business. You did a mitzvah, but it was incomplete. You made them suffer so much in those 3 or 4 days that went by. So therefore, you need a tikkun. What's your tikkun? You wait outside here for 3-4 days before we let you into Gan Eden. Just like you made them wait 3-4 days. Why did I tell you this story? Because upstairs, the examination, the test, the trial is even in fine details. How complete was it? Even though this was a generous man, but you see, with the more generous, the greater you are, the more they're careful in every little detail. As kind as he was, had he had the proper guidance, had he really, really worked on being a generous man completely, he would not have made that mistake. But he didn't think about it, that these people are going to be so nervous, that his words of reassurance are not going to be enough. He thought it would be okay, he's going to calm down. Apparently not. So upstairs, they were a little bit upset at him, but in the end, of course, he got through. So what's the real measure of kindness and generosity? What really is a good indicator? The constancy of this midah. How constant and regular a person is. Atadirut shel hadavar. As the rabbis tell us in Pirkei Avot, it's not how large a mitzvah you do. Hakol lefi rov ha'ma'aseh. Rov ha'ma'aseh is how often do you do it? Once a year, twice a year, or every day. Every day you look for opportunities to do chesed. That is the best indicator if this individual is a generous man. It's not that they come to him once a year. Imagine somebody who lives in Pismo Beach. Does everybody know here where Pismo Beach is? I don't even know if there's a Chabad there. Pismo Beach. He likes the waters. He likes fishing. There's no Bet Knesset there. Okay, fine. So he doesn't have minyan. He doesn't have kids, so he doesn't have to worry about a school. How are you going to do tzedakah? By the way, the halakha says, when it comes to Purim, we just had Purim, and you need to give matanot la'evyonim, right? You need to give, part of the mitzvah is to give money to the poor. If there are no poor people where you live, then you can set aside the money, and as soon as the first opportunity you have, you give them, but you put aside your money, right? But if somebody lives in such a place where there are no Jews, there are no aniyim, there are no poor people, he's going to have to wait until who knows when he goes to or travels to Eretz Yisrael or to a place where there's poor people. In the meantime, he's not doing tzedakah. He's not doing chesed with anybody. He doesn't even have neighbors. He lives all by himself. The next neighbor is 10 blocks away or whatever it is. There are places like that where it's very rural. You can't live in such a place. A Jew needs to have a community where he interacts with people, where they visit each other, help each other, do tzedakah with each other. That's part of Jewish living, Jewish community. So that's what the rabbi tells, if you really want to be a generous man, akol talul fi rova ma'aseh. That is the best indicator. How often do you do something? That will determine if you're generous or not. Bal chesed amiti, therefore, a real generous person, a kind person, is one who does not wait for the tzedakah or the opportunity to come to him. He goes and looks for opportunities to help. You don't have that many people like that, because not everybody is at the very other end of chesed. They're somewhere in between. They'll do it, they'll be considerate when they're asked to. But to initiate, to want to look for it, they don't do it. That is why it says about Hashem, Ki hafetz chesed hu. One of the midot of Hashem is that He wants to do kindness. That's His nature. That's the nature of Hashem. To be good, to want to do good, at all times. Even to those who don't deserve it, as the Kabbalah explains. There's a degree of chesed that is given even to those who don't deserve, because Hashem wants to give chesed, wants to be like that. And that's what is expected of one who wants to be a true Baal Chesed. To want to do it, not just to be like that when it comes to him, but to actually look for it. That shows chesed. How do we come to that midah? To actually want to do chesed? The only way you can ever want to do something at all costs, in all circumstances, is if you have a tzivui milemala, if you have God commanding you. Therefore, no matter how kind a person is by birth, no matter how generous he is because of his mazal, that he's giving and considerate and sensitive, if he's not commanded to do it, he may not do it at all times. He may only do it when it's comfortable, when it's easy for him, when he's asked. In order to want to really care about this midah very, very much, you have to have a tzivui eloki. And that is why we have a tzivui. We have a mitzvah in the Torah telling us to do these things. Otherwise, without the mitzvah, not everybody would think of doing all these kinds of good deeds. Without the tzivui, if a person has a challenge, which is really coming to him from the Yetzer Hara, he may not succeed in overcoming this challenge. Look at the following example. There's an individual who says, I want to make a lot of money now. Why? Because I want to give a lot of tzedakah. As soon as I make my first million, I'm going to do a lot of charity, build a Bet HaKnesset, build a kollel. He's made his first million, What does he say now? Well, I need to save some of that money for my pension, for my retirement, when I grow old. The Yetzer Hara is invading, right, and interfering in his plans. And even though he meant well, and he originally, but it's not pure. If it would be pure, he would not even think about saving now. He says, that was my original plan. That is what I wanted all along, very, very much. That's what I'm going to do now. But because it's not always pure, because a person is not cognizant of the commandment of God telling him that this is important, then he's going to find all sorts of excuses to think of himself first and not of others. So that's where the tzivui eloki, the commandment of God, is extremely important, because being nice and generous on your own is not always enough. How are you going to do battle with all these other plans and machshavot and thoughts that enter your mind, challenging you? Wait a minute, there's some truth and validity to this. You got to save for a rainy day. It's true. Yeah, but be careful. If a person does not have the proper direction, he will not know what is right and what is wrong, how much to do it, when not to do it, to do it, and so forth. Because these challenges will give him a hard time. Okay, so now that we've described a little bit the midah, we have to understand where this midah applies. Where does generosity apply? How is it actually done? Generosity, rabbis tell us, or chesed or nedivut, is done in it can be done in three major ways: with one's money, with one's body, and with one's knowledge. You can give people of your money. You can give people help them with your physical body, with your hands and feet, and you can give people of your chokhmah, to share with them your wisdom, to give them a good advice. This is the basic type of generosity in these three basic areas. But there is one more that is very important that I want to emphasize, and that is the generosity that applies to one's wife. The Torah says, "She'erak sutah donata lo yigra." You have to be careful not to deprive your wife from three things: her food, her clothing, and her ona. What's ona? Ona means time. That is what the word really means. That the Torah puts a tremendous emphasis on time, spending time with your wife. What kind of time? The Torah had in mind time of intimacy. It's very important to the relationship that it should be intimate. You're not just sharing the same house, you're not just eating together, having kids together, but there needs to be intimacy. And intimacy involves not just physical intimacy, it involves communication, talking to each other, and actually spending time with each other. Not 5 minutes, not 10 minutes, a little bit more than that, whatever it is. And of course, this happens, depending on the circumstances, either every day or once a week or whatever. Everybody's situation is a little bit different. The Torah puts a tremendous emphasis on this, not only because it's important for the marriage, but this is another form of giving. And you know what? For many, many men, to give of their time is very difficult. Here, honey, take the credit card, buy whatever you want. They don't have a problem giving their credit card. Take the checkbook. The money is fine. Give me of your time. Can you spend 15 minutes? After all, you spend hours on the internet. Why can't you give a little bit of that time to your spouse? That's a good, fair request to make. It's a healthy thing to do. If it's not done, it doesn't bid well for this relationship. The man is going to be exposed to other kinds of things in the internet that will take away his time and his interest, and the relationship will suffer no matter how kind and nice he is. It's impossible that it will be as good or as healthy had he instead invested in his relationship. So time is another form of chesed, it's another form of giving, and it's very important with one's spouse and with one's children. There's a saying that I saw, a quote, what is generosity? Generosity is not only in deeds, generosity is also in the attitude, one's expression, how one looks at each other, touching, anything that will be uplifting to another individual. anything that will be uplifting. In other words, you can uplift another individual with a nice expression, with a kind word. It doesn't have to be with money. All of that is generosity. Giving of yourself in some way that will be uplifting to the person. Rabbis tell us that this generosity is not only a beautiful midah. Anyone who excels in this area, who's very active in this area, will reap the benefits of it in olam hazeh and in olam haba. These is one of the mitzvot. Shadam ochel perotehem ba'olam hazeh ve'keren kayemet olam haba. What does that mean? You eat the fruits of this mitzvah in this world, and you still have the principle reserved for the world to come. You will derive some benefits in this world too, besides the benefit, besides the rewards that are waiting for you in olam haba. In other words, anybody who's actively involved in chesed and is generous in this world, somehow his life will benefit from it. Either he will have longer years, or he will be blessed in some other way. He will have some benefit here too. This is therefore a midah. The midah of chesed is therefore a midah that our forefathers always searched for in women. Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, when they weren't searching for a spouse, what did they look for more than anything else? This very beautiful, important midah called chesed or nedivut. A wife who will be the mother of his children too. She's not only your companion, she's going to be the mother of your children. Don't you want a mother who will be generous and kind? That's, besides God-fearing, of course, this was the most important midah that they looked for. Anybody who has this midah, then the door is wide open, as we said earlier, for all other midot as well to evolve. When it comes to tzedakah, you also see a big difference between one who just gives the money. As the rabbis tell us, if you give money to a poor man, you're blessed with 6 blessings. You say a kind word to him, you're nice to him, you're generous to him, you make him feel good, you're blessed with 11 blessings. More blessings are given to the individual who's kind. It's not the money. It's the fact that you were nice to him, you were considerate, you were sensitive, you sat him down, you gave him a cup of water, you listened to his story. That sometimes does more for the poor man than any money that you can give him. So we see many examples in the Gemara, in the Torah, how prominent this midah of chesed or nedivut, of being generous, is. Okay, so now that we've covered pretty much everything that we need to know about this midah, we want to know how to instill it in us. As we always do, I leave for the very end some ideas that can help us instill in us this midah. And as I said in the beginning of the lecture, it is not enough to uproot stinginess. We shared some ideas of how to uproot stinginess from those who have a hard time giving. Those pieces of advice are not all enough in themselves to instill generosity, which is at the very other end, at the other extreme. What could do it? Well, first of all, the Torah tells us, "Ve'afta l'reacha kamocha." That mitzvah of loving your friend as yourself, caring for him, is the foundation of all the mitzvot and is the key piece of advice over here. You want to begin to instill generosity, you have to care for somebody else. It does not actually mean love him as you love yourself. That's impossible. How do you love somebody else like you love yourself? What the Torah really meant is be considerate. You want him to visit you when you're sick, visit him when he's sick. You don't want to be harmed, then don't harm others. In other words, whatever you want for yourself, do for others. Whatever you don't want for yourself, then don't do for others. In other words, treat people fairly, as an equal. Be sensitive to their needs and care about them, because they're as though they're your own members of your family. So that is the foundation of all the mitzvot. Ichpatiyut, to care. Another idea that you should keep in mind, the rabbis tell us, is that when you give, you're actually giving yourself. All the mitzvot, what they have in common, the mitzvot that have to do with giving, is you're not just helping the poor man, you're actually helping yourself in the process. When the Torah asks of you, do this, do that for your friend, for your neighbor, don't charge him interest, take care of him when he needs your help. It's also in order to train you to become a giver instead of a taker. So every time we perform mitzvah and we help someone else, we're actually helping us. That is in our nature. There's another way we're helping us. We're helping ourselves. The Zohar says if a poor man comes to your door and knocks on your door and asks for a donation, don't think you're helping him. He may actually be saving your life. God forbid, a person may have been destined to be involved in a car accident the next day. But because that poor man was sent to his door the day before, the night before, that tzedakah that he gave him saved his life. So what do we think we helped the poor? They helped us. So all these mitzvot are not just to help someone else, they're actually helping us both in our nature, helping us become kinder by having regular opportunities for giving, plus they're maybe helping us in some unknown way for us. Famous story of Binyamin HaTzadik in the Gemara. Binyamin HaTzadik was in charge of the kupa of tzedakah, to help give charity for the poor, to help provide for the poor. It was a year of drought. People were not making money. But you still had poor people. A woman came to him. And she said, I need your help. He says, I'm sorry, the kupa is empty. The kupa is empty, and I can't help you anymore. In other words, there's nothing left. So she says, listen, Rabbi, if you don't help me, widow and her 7 daughters are going to die. She was mamash, she was holding by, nothing left to eat, they're going to die of hunger. So because of his compassion for her, this kind of a situation, he took from his own little bit of food and money that he had, just the bare minimum that he had for himself, and shared it with her. And they survived. This man, Binyamin HaTzadik, became very, very sick not too much after this story. And when he was on his deathbed, the Malachim upstairs told the Kadosh Baruch Hu, God Almighty, you said that whoever saves one life is as though he saves an entire world. This man saved a woman and her 7 girls. Shouldn't he deserve to live longer? Why do you want to take him now? So the rabbis tell us in the Gemara, they added 22 years to his life because of that. So he had arichut yamim, lengthy years because of that mitzvah. I always wondered, why 22? What kind of a number is 22?
7 times 3 is 21 plus her.
But why 7 times 3? So we do find arichut yamim, an extension. We do find an extra lease of life, 15 years. We do find it with Chizkiyahu and in other situations where Hashem added 15 years as a new lease of life. So I figured maybe 15 for the mother plus 1 year for every girl. So that's 7 plus 15 is 22, maybe. In any event, another example of how because of his generosity, he took from his own, they gave him a benefit in this world. Besides the mitzvah upstairs, there is a reward in this world as well. We find in the Mishkan, there's 2 interesting areas in the Torah where Hashem does not tell people how much to give. The building of the Mishkan that we just read about, even though some of the donations were fixed, there was one donation that Hashem says, give as much as your heart desires. Why? Why not set an amount? Everybody give $100. Or here, look at the other example. There's a mitzvah of giving terumah to the Kohen. You grow alfalfa, if that's what you're growing. Well, before you eat it for yourself, you have to give terumah to the Kohen, maaser to the Levi, that's tithing 10%. The Levi has to give terumah maaser to the Kohen. And then there's other.
The Kohen got 24 gifts too.
Yeah, the Kohen used to get, the Kohanim were supported by the Jews. That's very nice. Okay, the Kohanim are supported, so we give them all kinds of gifts, including terumah. But terumah, for some reason, does not have an amount. If you're growing oranges, you can give 1 orange, and you fulfill the mitzvah of terumah. Now, the rabbis came along and said, no, give at least 1/50th, not 1/10. Terumah is 1/50th, according to the rabbis. But they also said, that's midah benonit, that's the middle of the road. If you want to be generous, you give 1/40th. If you want to be stingy, you give 1/60th. In other words, there's room from 1/40th to 1/60th. But the middle of the road is what they advise, 1/50th. But I still had a question and I didn't find any explanation for it. Why doesn't the Torah tell us an amount? Why does the Torah leave it up to us? You can give anything you want. Perhaps it's the same idea with the Mishkan. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving us opportunities to stimulate us on our own. I want your heart to open up. I'm not going to give you an amount. An amount that's set aside doesn't really do it. It's not enough. You give it because you're being obligated to give. I want you to do it on your own. Give as much as you can. And some, of course, will give more. Some will give less. That will show who is generous and who's not. The Mishkan, Hashem wanted to be built with the heart, not with a set amount. I want it to become with all your heart. Give as much as your heart desires. That's a very, very special quality. And that is why the Midrash says the Mishkan was never destroyed. A Mishkan nignaz. It was interred. It was put away when the Bet HaMikdash was built by Shlomo HaMelech. Why? Because it came from the heart, from the contributions of the heart of the Am Yisrael. Anything that's done with the heart lasts forever. If it's done because I'm being told to do it, it's not the same. So Hashem wants mitzvot, certain mitzvot apparently, to bring out the generosity in us. Okay. So what do we do? What's some good advice? Torah tells us, "V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha." Yes, be nice, be generous, give tzedakah. But how do we become very generous? Here's some ideas that can be helpful. One is read a book. Read many books about stories of generous people. Read about how they were kind and generous. You'll be surprised how it will influence you. A lot of people who are generous who were asked, how did you ever become so generous and kind? What is it? I saw it by others. The majority, I think, of generous people have trained themselves to become like that because they saw it in someone else. It didn't come to them on their own. So therefore, reading about it will also be good. Train yourself to give tzedakah be'ilum shem, anonymously. In this way, your tzedakah is more pure. You're not taking the credit for it. The guy doesn't know who he got it from. You don't know who you gave it. In other words, if you do it more anonymously, it helps you do the act of tzedakah in a much more generous, much more unselfish way. Look for ways to help. A new neighbor came to the neighborhood. Perhaps they need a meal. Why don't you make them some cookies or bake them a cake? Somebody is sick. Maybe they need some help. Don't wait for the call to come to you. Go find out on your own. These are ideas, by the way, some people do it. Bnei Brak is known to be a city of tremendous amount of chesed. There's a lot of gemilut chasadim, gemachim, all kinds of funds. Your baby needs diapers, there is a fund for diapers. You need a pacifier, there is a fund that has pacifiers. You need a crib because your kids are coming to visit you for Shabbat. You don't have. There's all kinds of funds. People are really into Baruch Hashem. It's a city where there's a lot of chesed being done. So look, a person who really wants to be generous looks for the opportunities if there's any way that he can help. At home, train your kids to look out for each other. Does your sister need help? Go help her. And if she did, if one child did help the other, compliment them on them. Because by training them this way and by complimenting the deed, you are basically emphasizing how important this is. Charity begins at home. All kinds of situations which can arise either in one's home or outside one's home, neighbors, are opportunities to increase or to develop generosity. Let's say somebody came to your house and did a beautiful job. He repaired your fridge. How many people call up the company? You know Joe that you sent? He did a great job. That, by the way, that could be a promotion for Joe. It's a certain amount of generosity. I mean, you're thankful, right? Call up the guy. He did a good job. These are little tricks that help. Somebody needs a job, and you know someone that may be able to give him a job. Make the shidduch between them. Put them together. All kinds of ideas that help a person become more generous and kind-hearted. This one is really interesting. Let's say you're passing by here Beverly Boulevard in the middle of the day. You park your car, and you see that the car next to you, the meter is about to run out. And there is the meter maids, they're called, who's just waiting to write the ticket. And you put a quarter into his meter. How many people would do that? There are people that do it, by the way. And those meter maids are very upset. They want to write the ticket. What?
They get a commission.
That's what they say. They get, I don't know if they get a commission.
Generosity for them.
Yeah.
No, for the meter man.
No, they don't need the generosity. They have a fixed, regular job anyway. Yeah. What does it take? It took a quarter. And you're doing, that quarter will save the man, I don't know, 40, 50 bucks? 55, how do you know? Yeah.
Is that a mitzvah to do that?
No, you're not obligated, but that shows chesed, that shows generosity. These are just ideas that can help you. You want to know what's my favorite? This one applies especially to Israel. You're going by car, and somebody wants to go before you, and you say, go ahead. Because in Israel, unfortunately, not everybody does that. They try to get behind, before you, ahead of you. Zchut k'dima. Let him go. What's the big deal? Here they have a sign sometimes called yield. But that yield is not because they want you to be generous and kind. It's only for your own safety. That you got to yield to the traffic. Yeah, sometimes yield. Let somebody else go ahead of you. What's the big deal? Be generous. Buy somebody a book or give him a tape, a CD of a good lecture that he may need for whatever needs that he may have. You're doing him a chesed. You're being generous by buying him. You don't have to. You don't have to. But you know he will benefit from it. Praying for others who are in need, either to get married or they were sick. When we say Tehillim, that's chesed. Being generous with your time, you can do it for yourself. You're doing it for others. And the greatest chesed of all is when you help people come to Olam Haba. When you help them do teshuvah. When you're sensitive for their needs, their spiritual needs, and you show them the way of Torah. That's the greatest chesed of all, when you care about them. You go to somebody's wedding, not because you want to eat the food, because you want to make him happy. You want to dance with him, make him happy, wish him the best. A lot of people go to a wedding, oh great, I'm going to have a good meal tonight. What is it, rib steak or salmon? What's that?
Our CC has a problem with that.
Yeah. What do you mean? Is that what you're going for? You know that's called gezel? Anybody that goes just for the food and doesn't make the Hatam V'Kala happy, he stole from them a meal. He stole, yes, because when they paid for it, they intended to pay for it only on condition that you make them happy. So whoever goes only for the food and not to make them happy, he didn't fulfill the mitzvah, and it's a form of gezel.
Unless you give a gift.
Yeah, I guess so. You give a gift, yes. Not a cheap gift. You go to comfort, somebody passed away in the family, Nichum Avelim, you go and sit with him. That's a chesed. All kinds of ways that a person, even though it's hard for him, you get up and you teach yourself and you train yourself and you get used to it regularly. This trains you to become a Bal Chesed. This eventually will make you a more generous person. I want to end with something that I've said in the past many, many times, that this is the generation of Mashiach. The rabbis tell us if you want to be spared from all the troubles and tribulations of Mashiach, and there will be many troubles and problems and issues, wars and economical problems, you want to be spared of that, Yasok b'Torah v'Gemilut Chasadim. Just occupy yourself with Torah and Chesed. Why Torah and Chesed? Because these two build the world. And when Hashem is about to bring an end to the world as we know it, the only ones who will survive are those who contributed to building the world, not those who destroy the world. So acts of kindness and generosity and Torah, which are builders of the world, if you are involved in them, then you're involved in saving the world. Hashem will therefore save you. These are some of the mitzvot and acts that will help one during these very difficult times. There's a very cute but important mashal that Rabbi Yitzchak Mibaditchev would give to all those who are having, nevertheless, after giving all this advice, are still having a hard time with being generous. Listen to this cute but very important mashal and lesson. There's an individual that was given a tour of Gan Eden and Gehenom. He went upstairs. And he saw something strange. He came to the Gehenom and he saw that the people who were in Gehenom were being fed. There was a lot of food. But in order for them to eat, they were given spoons. But the problem with these spoons is that they were so long that there was no way for these people to feed themselves, with a big spoon. So they were hungry. They couldn't, the food was there, but they had big spoons and they had to use the big spoons to eat, and they just couldn't feed themselves, Wow, he says, wow, that's so strange. The food is there, they can't feed them. So then he went to Gan Eden, and he saw, wow, the food is there, and everybody's eating, even though they have big spoons. You know how they were able to eat?
They fed each other.
They fed each other. says when people are stingy, when people only think of themselves and selfish, they're only into themselves, so they will be hungry. They won't have anything upstairs to eat. When people are kind and are considerate of others, that I'm not only here for myself, I'm here also for others, then everybody's able to eat and everybody's able to enjoy. Very important lesson on how to have a better life here, and of course, a more rewarding Olam Haba as well. In the end, I think perhaps the best advice that I can give to people who are still having a hard time with giving to others is the following story, and with this will end. There was an advisor, a Jewish advisor to a king. You know what happens when kings have Jewish advisors? All the non-Jewish advisors are jealous. And all kinds of conspiracies are made up. Your Jewish advisor is a thief. He made all his money from cheating and from stealing. The king loved the Jew and never listened to the bad advice. But one day, somehow they convinced the king, listen, you don't believe us? Why don't you do an audit of what he has? Ask him how much money, how much properties he has, and you'll see for yourself that he has a lot that you don't know of. He says, okay, fine. He calls his Jewish advisor. I want you to give me in a couple days a list of everything you own, of all the money you have, all your accounts. Well, he was surprised, but he had no choice. So he went back, and after a couple of days, he brought him a small piece of paper. And the king says, you're lying to me, your good friend. I know that you have much more than this. Well, what are you doing here? This is not true. He said, King, your honor, you have a big mistake. You see, you think, and what you're thinking and what you're talking about is real estate and money. He says, that's not mine. All the real estate that you think I have and all the money in accounts that you think I have, that can be taken away from me at any moment. That's not really mine. You know what I wrote to you on this piece of paper?
Charity.
All the charity and the good deeds that I've done. Because that charity is in a safe place upstairs. No devaluation of it. Nobody will take it away. Nobody will touch it. Nothing can happen to it. That's mine. Everything else that you see and you think I have, that I don't know if I'll have tomorrow. I don't know even if I'll have it in a few minutes or not. You can take it away from me. What is really mine, the true possessions of a man, are his mitzvot and ma'asim tovim, his good deeds, his charity, his kindness and generosity. All of that is in a safe place. If we only remember that is really our true accomplishment, an accomplishment that will always be there for us, it will be easier for us to give. Because everything else we make here, we don't take with us. It's not real. It's so fake. It can be taken away. It can be worthless tomorrow, like a stock that falls up and down. Our true accomplishments are our mitzvot and ma'asim tovim. Thank you.